So today we're going to be covering the final two chapters of Bourgeois' wonderful book, Centering Prayer and Inner Awakening, and that's chapters 13 and 14. So we're going to be looking primarily at two things in particular. We're going to be looking at Thomas Keating's emotional programs for happiness, and we're also going to be looking at the welcoming prayer. Two very important aspects of centering prayer, and in particular, the divine therapy. So let's go ahead and start with the emotional programs for happiness. You know, Thomas Keating delineated three instinctual needs that we all have when we're born into this world. And those instinctual needs are the need for survival and security, the need for power and control, and the need for affection and esteem. So when, as children, we experienced any of these instinctual needs as being unfulfilled, especially on an ongoing basis, these unfulfilled needs likely became very exaggerated in our subconscious. And so to compensate, we searched for things in our lives that would help us to fill those unfulfilled, exaggerated needs. Okay? We developed attachments to people and places and situations that fulfilled those needs, things that brought us comfort. And we developed aversions to people, places, and situations that didn't fulfill those needs, those things that brought us discomfort. So these attachments and aversions that we developed became what Keating called our unconscious emotional programs for happiness. They became how we were programmed to be attracted to things that met those needs and averse to those things that didn't meet those needs. It's interesting, though, because these emotional programs for happiness are actually what cause most of our problems in life, because we're doggedly seeking whatever security and control and or esteem we can find. And as we all know, we tend to look in the wrong places, don't we? Father Keating gives this example. He says a young child overhears his father saying, "I wish he was more like his older brother." So hearing this attacks the younger brother's core instinctual need for esteem and affection, doesn't it? And this incident, this overhearing his father saying that, then becomes buried in the boy's unconscious. He may not even remember the particular incident in adulthood, but on an unconscious level, part of him continues to want to imitate his brother in order to achieve his father's affection. It's very unconscious. It's not something he does consciously, that he's even really aware of, but he's still drawn to needing to be like his brother so that he can achieve his father's attention or affection and attention. So his unconscious emotional program for happiness. Let's see, I'm going to try to mute everybody here. Mute everyone. Okay, so if everybody can mute themselves, I'm not sure I can mute you while I'm in screen share. But this unconscious emotional program for happiness of needing to be like his brother, it becomes a very deep part of who he is on into his adult life and drives many decisions in his life. And so, as a result, he develops attachments to things that make him more like his brother and aversions to things that make him different from his brother. And these attachments and aversions continue to drive his behavior throughout his life on an unconscious level. Again, many times we're not even consciously aware of these unconscious attachments and aversions, but they show up in our lives. And as soon as we start doing meditation, doing therapy, anything that allows us to become more self-aware, we start seeing how that's playing out in our lives. And it's usually not playing out for our overall well-being. Thomas Keating points out that the fact that we experience anxiety and annoyance is the certain sign that in the unconscious, there's an emotional program for happiness that's just been frustrated. Each one of us has a whole host of emotional programs for happiness that developed in our childhood and that run in our unconscious, all at the same time often. Each is based on our unique set of unfulfilled instinctual needs as we were growing up. And all of these myriad programs create anxieties as we interact in and with the world. So it's really important to begin to notice what they are. In describing these emotional programs for happiness, Keating is putting into contemporary terms much the same thing that the gospel writers documented 2,000 years ago about the temptations of Christ. So the analogy is this: Jesus was in the wilderness, as you may recall, fasting for 40 days, and he was famished. And so in the first temptation, Satan offered Jesus a quick fix to meet his survival and security needs for food. So Satan said to Jesus, "If you are the Son of God, then turn these stones into bread and eat." In the next temptation, Satan offered Jesus a dramatic act that was guaranteed to raise his esteem and affection. As he began his public ministry, that was pretty important. So, from the pinnacle of the temple, the most visible site in all of Jerusalem, Satan suggested that Jesus throw himself to the ground so that the angels would surely scoop him up and save him for all to see, raising esteem and affection for Jesus. And finally, in the third temptation, Satan offers Jesus the power and control of all kingdoms by saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, then worship me, and I will give you all the power in the world." Now, of course, Jesus turns away from each of these false offers, these offers to meet his instinctual needs. Instead, Jesus embraces God as his source of perfect security and esteem and power. And so the teaching here is that we really need to find our basic needs for security, esteem, and power from and in God, not from trying to achieve them on our own. This is a very fundamental exercise of our faith, isn't it? Without the Spirit of God, we can do nothing. We are like ships without wind. We are useless. Without the Spirit of God, we can do nothing. You know, the fulfilling of our instinctual needs is so tempting that it's hard to resist the notion that we can just achieve them from ourselves. The ego part of us thinks that we can get it ourselves. And so it takes great trust and discipline to let go of trying to satisfy our unconscious, exaggerated needs and turn to God for them. But the first order of business in the spiritual life is to turn away from our compulsions by trying to fulfill them ourselves. Our true freedom begins when we fully accept ourselves as already perfectly secure, loved, and empowered by God, here and now. When we free ourselves from our compulsions, we're able then to respond to God's guidance as Jesus did, worshiping and serving only God. For Thomas Keating, our pathway to achieving such freedom is experiencing the divine therapy through centering prayer. As we get deeper into our practice and become more open to the presence of God, our unfulfilled, exaggerated, instinctual needs become released from our unconscious, and we eventually become healed. These things that have been operating at a very unconscious level and tending to run, if not ruin, our lives, come into our conscious awareness through the divine therapy and therefore are able to be healed. Our core needs begin to be fulfilled now through the presence of God. This is true spiritual freedom. Now, to supplement the divine therapy that's taking place during our centering prayer practice in its own unique way for each one of us, to supplement that, we have the welcoming prayer to use during our daily lives. And the welcoming prayer goes like this: Welcome. I welcome everything that comes to me today because I know it's for my healing. I welcome all thoughts, all feelings, all situations, all emotions, all persons. I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire for esteem, affection, and pleasure. I let go of my desire for safety, security, and survival. I let go of my desire to change any situation or person, including myself. And I open to the love of God and to God's healing power and presence within me. Amen. You know, Bourgeot points out, and I totally agree, that this is one of the most powerful practices we have for directly confronting, for putting a stick in the spokes of our emotional programs for happiness. You know, the purpose of the welcoming prayer is to deepen our relationship with God by consenting to his presence in the very midst of our emotional responses to people and events in our everyday lives. Bourgeot calls this a sort of consent on the go, consent right in the midst of our lives. And so the welcoming prayer helps to dismantle our emotional programs for happiness and to heal the wounds of a lifetime by addressing them where they're stored in our body. You know, there's an immense power in this very embodied, visceral practice. Because if you do it consistently and with all of your heart, the welcoming prayer, it can very quickly lead you through those times when your emotional programs get triggered. The welcoming prayer can enable you to reclaim that emotional energy so that you can use it as spiritual energy. It's transforming in that regard. So what happens is that the energy that was bound up in identifying with your emotions and holding on to them and buttressing them with the stories that you're telling yourself about them, all that energy is set free. You know, all that energy that goes into all the drama around our emotional programming, all that energy is set free. And Bourgeois says that this release of energy is sometimes so powerful that you can feel it sort of like a whoosh, she says. She points out that, quote, we torment ourselves by telling ourselves stories about our sensations, our emotions, our thoughts and feelings, by identifying with them, by trying to manipulate them and reacting from them. We torment ourselves, she says. And we can all relate to this, each in our own very unique way. Well, the welcoming prayer is the antidote to this. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to show you how important it is to become aware of your emotional energy and then to be able to release it rather than stuffing it back down or holding on to it in some way. When we feel an emotion, what we're really sensing is the vibration of a particular energy. Emotion, after all, is the movement of energy. It's energy in motion, emotion. And each emotion has its own energy vibratory signature, as shown in this diagram here. So each figure here shows the regions in the body where a particular emotion either increases energy, that's the warm yellow and orange colors, or decreases energy, that's the cool blue colors. Depression, for example, the third from the bottom, depression, for example, that cool blue color, it is decreasing our energy, our emotional energy. Love, on the other hand, right next to it, increases our emotional energy. You know, interestingly, science and medicine used to believe that thoughts and emotions originated in the brain. However, modern research is proving that thoughts and emotions are energy vibrations that occur in our body, specifically in the matrix of connective tissue that interconnects all cells, all tissues, all organs. So these energy vibrations are then, once the energy vibrations in our body, we can begin to feel them there. It's not until they've been expressed in the body energetically that they're then perceived by our brain. And it's there in our brain that they're processed and verbalized according to our acquired expectations and beliefs. And so the brain's function is to assign meaning to these emotional vibrations and to create stories around these emotions. And so it's therefore become evident that an emotional sensation and the meaning ascribed to it by our brain can be separate from each other. You can be aware of the sensation in your body, the emotional vibration, the energetic vibration, before we actually begin ascribing meaning and stories to it in our brain. We can intervene between the moment when we become aware of the emotion, but before we begin ascribing stories and meaning to that emotion. Okay? There's a nanosecond of time between those two occurring. The thing is, we're usually only paying attention to the meaning and stories that we've ascribed to that emotion. We're not really paying attention to just the raw, energetic sensation of that emotion in our body. And so in the chart on page 136 in Bourgeois' book, I would actually put 5A, the place where the cycle can be broken. I'd put that point between point 6 and 7, where you've become aware of the emotion at point 6, but you're not yet engaged in your usual internal dialogue about it at point 7. Okay, just a little tweak there that I would add. So a lot of information there, but mainly to say we need to be tuned into the energetic sensation of our emotion at the level of our bodies before we get all caught up in the stories that we begin telling ourselves about that emotion. So let me summarize this chart briefly. You have at point 1 the 3 unconscious emotional programs for happiness: the need for control, the need for love and esteem, and the need for security. Now, these 3 unconscious programs lead to point 2. That's where we're attracted to that which makes us happy and averse to that which makes us unhappy. This is our hidden agenda as we encounter people and situations in our daily lives. And so when someone or some situation triggers any one of our unconscious programs at point 4, it frustrates us, doesn't it? And it leads to a distressing emotion at point 6. This is where, at this point, it is just the emotional, usually it's tension or stress or a tightening that we can feel in our body when something like that happens. Now, if we have no way of addressing that negative emotion at the energetic level and in a healthy way, then we immediately begin engaging in an internal dialogue, an internal commentary at point 7. I would actually call this an internal monologue, not a dialogue, because it's just us talking to ourselves about it, isn't it? Interpreting it, analyzing it. But it's at this point that by resisting it, by resisting that emotion or overly identifying with it, or playing the blame game and casting it in a story that fits our hidden agenda, our unconscious narrative, it's at this point that we become caught up in the emotion. Okay, we become trapped by it. So this throws us into emotional turmoil at point 8. And that emotional turmoil only serves to further reinforce our unconscious emotional programs for happiness. You see how it makes a circle there, back at point 1. It can be a very vicious cycle that keeps us horribly stuck and burdened with a lifetime of emotional baggage. So our emotional energy, rather than flowing and ultimately being released, becomes lodged in our body. And it can be lodged anywhere in the body and stay stuck there until something facilitates its release. When, however, we open to that emotional energy when it first arises in our body and we welcome it, we use the welcoming prayer, for example, to welcome it. When we do that, we enable that emotion to flow through us rather than getting stuck in us. And in this way, we're able to break our unconscious patterns and move into greater spiritual freedom. Again, we do this by using the welcoming prayer. I'm going to remind y'all to mute yourself if you're not already, just so we can cut down on some of the background noise. Thank you. Now, I'd like to take a moment to point out that we can also get knocked off track by self-satisfaction, by the fulfillment of our emotional programs for happiness. It can work both ways. For example, let's say you have a control issue. Okay, we all do in our own way. So we have this control issue, this deep need for things to go the way that we think they should. And let's say you're in a situation where you actually win. The situation works out the way that you want it to, in a way that you like, that makes you happy. In those situations, we can puff up with pride and think to ourselves, God is so good. We chalk it up as it being the Holy Spirit at work, prayers answered. Well, this is spiritual possessiveness, spiritual materialism. It's where the ego grabs a hold of a perceived victory and runs with it. So you see, we can get just as hung up by pleasant emotions and situations as we can by unpleasant and distressing ones. And the reason we don't recognize this so quickly is because it's initially so pleasant. We love the elation. And so we don't realize that we're equally knocked off balance and that we're really setting ourselves up for quite a nice fall unless we catch it. And so we need to keep our antenna out for these inflated situations as well. We need to begin to recognize that sort of giddy feeling inside when we're high on some success, okay? We need to be able to let go of that as well and come back to balance, come back to equanimity, come back to our center in and with God. So the welcoming prayer comes in just as handy for these situations of self-satisfaction as it does for our unpleasant situations. The welcoming prayer was developed by one of Thomas Keating's associates named Mary Morzowski. She says to welcome and to let go is one of the most radically loving, faith-filled gestures we can make in each moment of each day. It's an open-hearted embrace of all that's in ourselves and in the world. Mary put this practice together from basically 3 sources: from the work she was doing in the field of mental health using biofeedback, from the book Abandonment to Divine Providence, an early 18th century spiritual work by Jesuit priest and spiritual director Jean-Pierre de Caussade. And then third, she put this together from the work she did directly with Thomas Keating, especially his teaching on the emotional programs for happiness. And once she put together the welcoming prayer, Keating and others saw the value of it. And over the years, it's been supported and fine-tuned and expanded within the centering prayer community and beyond. So today it's a much used prayer for those who practice centering prayer. The welcoming prayer is a practice that you use in the moment when you get triggered. In other words, whenever you get knocked out of your comfort zone in your daily life by some distressing emotion or physical pain, it could be emotional or physical pain. And as shown here, it's basically a 3-step process. First, we focus on and sink into the emotional or physical pain in the present moment. Then we name that particular emotional or physical pain. We name it and then we welcome it. And once we do that, we let it go. So let's go over these steps in a little more detail. The first step, focus on and sink into the pain. That means to become aware of the emotional or physical pain in your body, okay? You embody it. This is where you become aware of what's going on in this particular upset as a sensation in your body. So for example, let's say something triggers you and you suddenly experience a spike of anger or even rage. Well, rather than getting all caught up in the anger, instead of doing that like we normally default to, instead we bring the fullness of our attention to it. We open to it as a sensation in our body. You get a felt sense of it in your body. You tune in to what this anger feels like in your body. In other words, what's happening in your body as you experience anger? Is there a tightness? And if so, where is it? Where do you feel it most? Is your breath getting short and shallow? Just noticing how your body is experiencing this particular emotion. In other words, you become aware of how the emotion feels in your body, the physical sensation of it. You're not telling yourself stories about it or making someone wrong or blaming yourself or the other or the situation. You're just simply opening to the physical sensation of that emotion. I love this feelings wheel by artist and therapist Lindsay Brayman. It shows the primary emotions at the center of the wheel, followed by the subgroups of emotions, that inner wheel. And then outside, the outer wheel is the physical sensations that result from those emotions. It's important to note because all emotion, as we've been talking about, is fundamentally sensation. There's no emotion that doesn't have a ground in physical sensation. And the more you work directly with the sensation itself, the physical sensation itself, the more the energy of the emotion can flow. On the other hand, the more you focus on your story about the emotion, the more that emotion becomes cast in stone, becomes stuck in your body. The stories you tell yourself about the pain or distressing emotion cause it to become stuck in you. But if we move beyond our stories about the pain or emotion, beyond our fears about it, our awfulizing about it, then that pain or emotion will come to pass. It will pass. It will dissolve in that openness, spaciousness that you're providing for it by not closing in around it. So, this first step of the welcoming prayer, of focusing on and sinking into the emotional or physical pain, is done at the level of physical sensation in your body. No psychoanalysis, no commentaries, no self-justification, no why am I feeling this way, no stories. That would simply be picking apart the pain or emotion in your head. Okay? Now you'll discover that if you really want reliable judgment about what's happening, whether something that you're encountering with either inside you or outside of you, whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, you need to check in with your body for the presence or absence of constriction. Your body doesn't lie, does it? It will let you know if something's a thumbs up or thumbs down. For example, if you feel your body tightening up, or pressure in your head, or your jaw locking up, or a constriction in your chest or your gut, that sort of thing. If you feel that sort of constriction, then it's a pretty good sign that something's not right. But you have to tune into your body to notice this. Otherwise, you'll just get caught up in your head by being rational and mounting arguments and remain clueless as to what's really happening. So this is the first and very important step of the welcoming prayer. That is to focus and sink into the distressing experience in the present moment. You're not trying to change it or fix it, okay? You're simply opening to it, simply acknowledging it. Now, the second step is the real counterintuitive part. So, grounded in the sensation, present to your own discomfort, aware of and acknowledging it in your body, you name that emotional or physical pain. And as you do that, you begin to open to it and welcome it with a very light touch. You say to yourself, welcome anger, or welcome fear, or welcome headache, whatever it is. You welcome it with a very light touch. You're not getting overly involved in it or identified with it. Now, why why name the emotional or physical discomfort? Well, that's because it's very important that you direct your welcome at the pain, not the cause of the pain. Okay, very important. You're not welcoming the cancer, for example, or the incest that you suffered as a child, or the person who wronged you in your daily life. You're not welcoming whatever has caused the physical or emotional pain. It's not the triggering situation itself. It's the emotional or physical pain that has become triggered in the moment. Big difference. So it's not welcome cancer. It's welcome the fear that's triggered by that. It's not welcome person who wronged me. It's welcome the anger that was triggered by that. It's not welcome the loss of my loved one. It's welcoming the grief that was triggered by that. And so when you welcome the pain and open to it, you give it the space that it needs, whatever space it needs to resolve and then dissolve. But remember, when you try to push it away and resist it, try to get involved in fixing it or making all kinds of scenarios around it, you're energizing it in a very powerful way. The antidote to that is to open to it, allow it, welcome it. In doing so, you transcend it. Again, that seems very counterintuitive, but try it. You'll see what a difference it makes in how you deal with or navigate emotions. Now, briefly, just physiologically, what happens when you open to the pain and welcome it is that your whole nervous system shifts from constriction to spaciousness. And so when we react negatively to our discomfort with resistance and or blame and or guilt or any of the other ways that we might constrict around the pain, when we do that, the reptilian part of our brain is activated. Okay? This leaves us with very limited and primitive options with which to respond. It's mostly a fight, flight, or freeze response that we're limited to. When, however, we respond to a difficult situation with openness and welcome, the prefrontal cortex of our brain is activated. And this presents us with a very broad spectrum of wise options with which we can respond to the situation. It's hugely different, it makes a huge difference. Some of you may have heard of the Heart Math Institute. They've closely documented the synchronization between our brain and our heart. And so when we constrict and seize up in physical and or emotional pain, the brain and heart rhythms go out of alignment. They create this real chaotic field of dissonance. But when we relax and open to the painful situation, when there is spaciousness, the brain and heart realign. They come back together. They synchronize and start talking to each other again. They come into this beautiful resonance. So this action of shifting from constriction to spaciousness has profound and really instantaneous results in changing the flow of energy, emotional energy throughout your entire body. And as the flow of energy changes in your body, the way you perceive and respond to your outer situations change as well. So this is the real genius of the welcoming practice. In the simple act of welcoming your discomfort, something shifts and your inner defenses relax, allowing new possibilities to emerge. Now, the third and final step of the welcoming prayer is the letting go part. And the most important thing to say about this part is don't try to let go of it too fast. If you simply say, I let go of whatever the physical or emotional sensation is, if you simply say, I let go of this fear, I let go of this anger, I let go of this headache, you don't want to be dismissing it. You don't want to just be conceptually letting go of it. You've got to really feel this in your body, feel the opening up, feel the opening up your heart and your mind to the situation. And you realize that this is not a letting go of the pain or emotion forever. It's just in the moment. It's just you're letting go just in that moment. You're feeling it just in that moment. And then in the next moment. And then in the next moment. Continually giving the pain or emotion the space it needs to move in each and every moment. You're letting go and consenting to God. It's sometimes said that we let it go by putting it into the hands of God. And so whether it's emotional pain or physical pain or even emotional spiritual elation, by using the welcoming prayer, we recite the following. I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire for esteem, affection, and pleasure. I let go of my desire for safety, security, and survival. I let go of my desire to change any situation or person, including myself. And I open to the love of God and to God's healing power and presence within me. You may recognize that the first three of these are Keating's emotional programs for happiness, aren't they? They're the programs that run our automatic, conditioned, compensatory reactions, mostly unconscious. That desire for safety and security, that desire to be in control, and the desire for esteem, to be loved. Now, the fourth statement, I let go of my desire to change the situation, that helps cut through the belief that we're doing spiritual practice because we think something is amiss and we want to fix it. That's kind of ego's ulterior motive sometimes in this, and we want to watch out for that. The idea is not to do this practice so we can get through the upset and get back to normal as soon as possible. The idea is not to fix the situation. The idea is to find equanimity, balance within ourselves that no longer needs the situation to be fixed. Can you see the difference? This practice helps you to abide, to hunker down in the midst of the storm, and to rest in the calm eye of the storm. To reconnect, to get out of the drama and frenetic aspects of the storm itself and come back to your center, that peace and calm at the center of the storm where we are in and with God. From that place, we can come back to whatever the painful situation is with more love and wisdom and the guidance of spirit. A very simplified version of the welcoming prayer is this, where we simply say, welcome to whatever the pain is, okay? Welcome anger, welcome sciatica, welcome whatever it is. And we go on to say, I let go of the desire for control, affection, and security in this situation. I let go of the desire to change this situation. And over time, this prayer can become wordless. It becomes simply an inner gesture of welcoming God's presence within you in the moment, as simple as an inhale and exhale. And you'll find that you cultivate a much deeper awareness and acceptance of the moment. And you cultivate a willingness to allow whatever it is to come and then to pass without the need to hold on to it. You'll be able to accept and honor and celebrate the goodness of each moment for what it truly is. Now let's close with a deepening understanding of what we're doing when we're in centering prayer, and more importantly, what God is doing within us. In the final chapter of our book, Bourgeot highlights that the self-emptying, the kenosis that we experience in centering prayer, leads us to an eternal circulation of love. We become a part of that eternal circulation of love into and through us. As Bourgeot puts it so beautifully, she says, quote, one self emptying, spilling into another in the great watermill of love, through which God shows us God's innermost nature and bestows this vital energy upon the world in a cascade of divine creativity. We're in the flow of God at this point, not in the stop-start chaos of our ego. I love this quote from the 15th chapter of John, where we're reminded that I am the vine, you are the branches, abide in me as I in you. This is the deep and essential mystery that when we empty ourselves, when we let go of all of our drama and stories about it and reconnect, recenter in and with God, when we empty ourselves, we immediately reconnect with the vine of which we're a branch. We transcend our individual, seemingly separate self. And we move back into the ocean of divine love of which we are all one. And so centering prayer essentially is hardly a solo practice, is it? It actually connects us to all people, to all of life. And this is the true church, the living and eternal body of Christ. And so I'd like to bring us to the close of this class and point the way toward your continued practice by quoting a paragraph from the last chapter of our book. In it, Bourgeois says, the goal of the contemplative life is unitive seeing, gradually coming to realize that really there is nothing that is not God. God is the higher and the lower. God is the dots and the spaces between the dots. Nothing can fall out of God. And all is tenderly and joyously held. To see this, she says, is to behold the kingdom here and now, and to be in constantly renewed immediacy with the source of your own true abundance. The goal of the contemplative life, then, she says, is to make beautiful Christians, those with the insight and the inner flexibility to flow into life in any and all circumstances, knowing that the fountainhead is love. The goal of the contemplative life, then, is to make beautiful Christians, those with the insight and the inner flexibility to flow into life in any and all circumstances, knowing that the fountainhead is love. Okay. So let's go ahead and take our 5-minute break, and we will come back at 14 minutes after the hour to discuss. So 14 minutes after the hour. Okay. We covered a lot of ground there, didn't we? Yes. Great. So hopefully everybody is getting back here. Good. Great. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, and also had someone ask about the name of the book by Jean-Pierre de Caussade, Abandonment to Divine Providence. I put the title of that book and author in the chat as well. So, Amanda was saying that she struggles with the welcoming prayer because she's found after letting go of everything, there's nothing left, just complete emptiness slash dissociation. So, I just want to address that. Um, that emptiness is really where we're headed in meditation. That's where we're entering into the presence of God. And it does feel like emptiness. We call it emptiness because it doesn't register in our everyday thinking mind. So it feels like emptiness. It's actually very rich with spiritual divine presence. But we call it emptiness because it doesn't have any of the contents of our everyday waking awareness. Dissociation is something different. Dissociation is something that we do from the level of our ego. It's a defense mechanism. It's the way the ego sometimes deals with difficult situations, especially traumatic situations that it doesn't otherwise know how to deal with. So it just dissociates with them. Dissociation is totally taking place in the ego level of our everyday awareness. It puts it into the subconscious, but that's not where we move into our heart of hearts, where we're simply in the presence of God. So very different. Dissociation is a very different, it's a psychological process, not a spiritual process. So if you're using the welcoming prayer and you're getting to that level of emptiness, of spiritual emptiness. Know that you're in the presence of God. You're immersed in God. God is immersed in you, and there's no defense mechanism about it. That's not a psychological process. Now, dissociation. I love what Cynthia said. In chat, you might see that, Amanda. She says there's some somatic emotional release techniques that can complement this process, as well as cranial sacral therapy. I highly recommend those are addressing the more psychological levels of dissociation, for example. Um, Cynthia goes on to say it's a very powerful technique for pain management in her experience and for being creatively alive. So if you find that you are dissociating, that has become a way that your ego deals with some of the things that might come up through the divine therapy, and you want to get unstuck from that, you want to get out of that. That's an emotional program for happiness right there. That's the way the ego thinks that it can attain happiness by just boxing off, dissociating from the painful experience. I would supplement this more spiritual process of centering prayer and divine therapy. I would supplement that with some of these emotional release techniques that are more psychological. Okay. All right. Good deal. Thanks for the thumbs up. Good. Super. And keep me posted on that, any of you that are dealing with that, because as a psychologist and a spiritual director, I'm very interested in how those two supplement each other. Good. Okay. Yeah, and people are thanking you, Amanda, for that great question. Okay, so let's see. James, I think you had your hand up next, then Christine, and then Peggy.
Okay. Fascinating. I mean, it's incredible how much this covers and all the different kind of things that it opens up. I'm not going to get into detail, just blown away with how this is touching on so many things and connects to many different kind of systems of thought. It's really amazing. I'm thinking about the book, The Theory of Everything. I think you just tapped into
Oh
all
boy,
the different kind
yes.
of notions from different
Yes.
sources, whether it's spiritual, Christianity, psychology, the Enneagram.
Yes,
Just so
yes.
many different things are kind of being touched into.
Yes.
It does kind of turn our world paradigms upside down, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does.
like you're saying that the things we think are going to lead to happiness may actually do the very opposite.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
And like I said, there's different sort of schools of thought about how to interpret that, different languages, but
Mhm.
seems to be an amazing commonality.
Yes.
And then this other thing is, you're right, is so against human nature. And I see it usually as a more for pain or what have you, more of a Buddhistic Eastern approach rather than the Western approach to
Yes.
face and embrace it, which goes
Yes.
completely against human nature.
Yes, it
We want to get
does.
away from the hot stove. What are you talking about? Touch the hot
Yeah.
stove. But that
Yes.
does seem to be the answer in the Eastern way for anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, pain, what
Mhm.
have you. Face, embrace, come to terms with it. Don't
Yes.
react, don't judge.
Yes.
Just like you
Yes.
said, I was intrigued with your phrase, just let it dissolve, resolve and
Resolve.
dissolve. And
Right. Right.
we want to try to control it. I mean, so it's completely
Mhm.
counterintuitive, but I think it's you're right on in the way you
Mhm.
amplify that in terms of the spirituality, the
Mhm.
Christianity aspect of it is just awesome. Thank you.
Good. Oh, James, beautifully stated. Thank you for picking up on all the richness of this and the different dimensions of this. So important. And I love the idea of the whole concept of touching the hot stove. What we're opening to is not just the pain in our finger, but the lesson that we learn from the painful situation, the lesson that we learn, hey, might not want to touch that hot stove again. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We do want to treat. It's often been said that every painful situation, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, even mental pain, is there to teach us something. Is some of our most poignant teachers. Is something that we're needing to learn at a deep level that, for whatever reason, we haven't gotten at another level. So it's almost like it's has to go into the pain realm in order for us to get it. Pain of
Hmm.
any nature can be our greatest teacher, but we've got to open not only to we have to open to the pain in order to get the lesson. If we stuff it away or try to fix it really fast, put Humpty Dumpty back together too fast, then we'll miss the lesson and we'll probably break again. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
James.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Thank you.
You too.
Christine, please. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Gosh, so bear with me here because, please, I was coming in today with a question, and
Mm,
actually, even though I had to come in late, I so appreciate everything that you've shared about the welcoming prayer, and it's kind of, so I'm kind of processing quickly because there's a whole bridge that leads right up to my question. Um, the welcoming prayer practice, I am grateful that in January I got to hear the Colorado group do a like 3-hour workshop.
good.
And so I've really embraced it more in practicing it. And as I was listening to you, like the third step where you first had let it go,
Mm,
I remember and I love what you said. And then in the written material, because actually the release attachment to or release desire for the safety and security, and recognizing my experience and what I've been through, it definitely has settled me down often when I go there. And something came to me that was another something that I had read by Thomas Keating, and
mm,
I'm a little like wow. So I had to Google it because I what I remembered was that Thomas Keating said powerlessness is our greatest treasure,
yeah.
and so
That's counterintuitive, isn't it?
well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I
Mm,
really sat with that and all of that. And then the feeling of the welcoming prayer. Anyway, I still have more to process, but pulling this together. So I don't know, I can do this or not, but I had to Google it thinking, did I remember that right? So when I put in powerless is our greatest treasure, there's a few more sentences after it. Is it okay to read it or not?
sure. Sure.
So to me, it ties into the practice of the welcoming prayer. And this is almost like taking me to this place of experiencing it.
Good.
So he said, powerlessness is our greatest treasure. Don't try to get rid of it. Everything in us wants to get rid of it. Grace is sufficient for you, but not something you can understand. To be in too big a hurry to get over our difficulties is a mistake, because you don't know how valuable they are from God's perspective. For without them, you might never be transformed as deeply and as thoroughly.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I've heard another way of saying that, and I don't know who to attribute it to because it goes back so far. It's one of the ancient philosophers, but nobody really knows exactly who said this. But I believe it's so true, and it's so similar to what Thomas Keating was saying there, and that is that our greatest strength is our ability to be vulnerable, to go to that place in ourself where we have let go of all of our defense mechanisms. We have let go of all of our reactive reflex responses to things, and we have just settled into the grace. And yes, we can't understand grace. We've just settled into, we're letting go into the grace of God. That from an ego standpoint, it feels very vulnerable and powerless, as Thomas Keating says. But it's in giving up that power, that human ego power, that we open ourselves to God's power in and through us. And that is our greatest strength. So it's very counterintuitive to us trying to understand it from a human ego perspective, but from a deep spiritual perspective, it is so true. This is where we surrender all that we know ourselves to be, all that we have created ourselves to be, to the love and action of God within us. Thank you for bringing that up, Christine. Thank you.
Thanks. May I ask my question?
Oh, okay, yes. But
Sorry.
do bear in mind, we just have about 10 minutes and for discussion, and we've got three more people with hands up.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so I love what you're saying. Makes me think of present day Brené Brown and the power of vulnerability, all her talks. And for me, this like my whole journey. So I guess my question is, I'm finding kind of in a place that I've not ever been before, almost like unearthing has been a word, but is it possible, like, and why this powerlessness aspect is, I feel like at this intersection of this course, my years of this, 3 new things, present life, continuing work on self in different ways, that there's almost like I'm ready, like not I'm ready, but something is ready to completely surrender all aspects of what I've ever known about myself, or identities that have been there, or anything. Is that, can you speak to like just this sense, or is that possible? Is it?
Well,
Like,
that is a sense that I think we will all experience on our spiritual journey, that we are ready. There is a part of us, as the ego is letting go of its programs for happiness, of its needs for security, affection, and control, as it's letting go of those things, a deeper spiritual part of us is coming to life, the soul, you might call it. And we do sense that, and we'll sense it in our own ways. And it might be something that we sense at a particular point in time, or it might be something that we sense a little here, then a little there. And it's very unique to each one of us. But I think what is common is to know that as we let go of who we created ourselves to be, that part of us that God created us to be, that seed of God within us, that soul within us, is beginning to come to life. So I wouldn't try to analyze it beyond that. I would just really honor that sense and stay open to it, but don't try not to analyze it. Yes, but definitely on the right track, Christine.
thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Please, Peggy.
Quickly, I just wanted to share with you that I'm so glad we got into this section today on centering, on welcoming prayer.
Good.
I started back in, I think it was 1986, with a new a person who came back after being trained by Thomas about centering prayer. And I think that was pre-welcoming prayer.
Okay, could have been.
Okay.
Wow.
So
yeah.
welcoming prayer for me for a long time didn't really make, it wasn't something I was doing, and I found it a little awkward. So
Okay.
what you gave us today was a huge help. But one little thing I did learn about myself, I think without stepping into or under the umbrella of welcoming prayer, for my sensations and emotions, I don't think I work them enough or properly. And how I can explain that is by saying, I would say the words, denial really is what it was of how I felt.
Yeah.
And that is like walking upstream.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
yes.
even the 3 steps looking at, and that final letting go, that is
Yes.
it. That's where I realized the flow has to come into all this. So I learned a great deal. And
Peggy.
so I thank you. I feel better.
Wonderful.
Taking this course and knowing I'm easing off that we may not see you again, knowing this other in May. So we'll look forward if possible for that. So
wonderful.
thank you,
Peggy.
Jenna, and you did so well. So that's all I'm going to say.
Peggy, thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
you will see me again. I sure hope to see you again. So,
Wonderful.
Thank you so
Thank
much. And yes, letting go of swimming upstream and just moving into the flow. Can you imagine after spending all of your life swimming against the current and doggedly determined that swimming harder, the less you got where you were going, you just swim harder. Can you imagine after living your whole life that way, the freedom and release of just letting go and letting God's current carry us? It's just a whole new way of coming to life. So
and
thank
I
you,
felt
Peggy.
it was denial that one goes in order to do that. Thank you, Jenna.
Not denial the river, but denial. I'm just playing. Thank you, Peggy. Oh boy. Okay. iPhone Anna, how are you today? Good to see you. If you'll unmute. Can you unmute, Anna? Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
this does help
Good.
strengthen my commitment to welcoming prayer and centering prayer, and
Good.
therefore to God and to the rest of our lovely planet. But
Yes.
what I had trouble with in the beginning with welcoming prayer was, how do you welcome things that are wrong, or
Okay.
illness like cancer, or how do you welcome hunger and trafficking and all of the suffering in the world?
Yes.
And for me, it went right back to Mary Mrozowski and the abandonment divine providence. And you touched on it, and that is, where is God not? What I welcome is God's presence in this. And that leaves me open to accept, to do what I can to change it, and to see where God is drawing goodness and love out of absolutely everything, no matter what we do.
Oh, Anna, that's beautifully stated. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such an important clarification. We're not welcoming the things that the evil things in the world. We're not welcoming the war in Ukraine, for example. We're not welcoming that. We're welcoming what it catalyzes in us, its effect on us, and we're welcoming it so that we can open to that calling or that ability to see God's presence in everything. And by being open, we can bring God's love and wisdom into those situations. By reacting in fear or distress or aversion, we're just closing ourselves up and we're not allowing God to work in and through us. So we're really working at cross purposes and can fuel whatever has triggered or catalyzed our response to make goodness out of this somehow, to bring God's goodness into it. Thank you, Anna, for putting that so beautifully.
You are welcome. And it also helps you to welcome God's presence and remember God's presence. And
that's right.
It's huge.
That is huge. Absolutely. That is everything. Absolutely. Thank you. Important reminder. So, Lynn, let's finish with a question for you, and then I'm going to lead you in a practice of welcoming prayer, okay?
I think that mine is a kind of a summary of what you've just said.
Good.
I love the line on page 144. It's right at the first full paragraph.
Okay.
With disassociation.
Yes.
Tendency is strong in spiritual seekers to want to make a religion of one's better moments. And what I took from that, and it really fits with everything that was just said, is that how do we become unitive? How do we see that we are all connected? It's through compassion. Yes. It's through suffering. It's through those things. Yes. We, when you make a religion of your better moments, which is done, it's real convenient and joyful and everything, and hallelujah. But it really isn't the way we really connect.
Yes.
We really see in each of us and how we're connected. And I had a meditation first thing this morning, and it said, don't believe everything you think.
I love it. I love it.
With that.
I love that. Oh boy, I love that. And it's like Bushy, who is going to be doing our next contemplation day for Closer Than Breath. It's like he said, thoughts and emotions are not commands. They're not commands. Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Oh boy. Okay, so let's take a couple of moments just to take some deep breaths and try to move. We've been looking at all of this from a very intellectual, full of words and images kind of perspective. And let's see if we can bring that down into just pure spiritual experience in our heart of hearts by practicing this prayer together. It will be a guided meditation, so there will still be words, but I hope you will use this welcoming prayer as an introduction to your centering prayer, a way to become very heartful and open, a way to sort of till the soil, so to speak, of our egos so that we can move into that deeper place of soul within us. So understanding that welcoming prayer is, as Anna was pointing out so beautifully, it is a time for deepening our relationship with God by consenting within the ordinary activities of our daily lives, consenting to God, where we invite God into the very core of our everyday lives, especially when we're under duress or stress. So you'll find, or you've already found, if you've been practicing welcoming prayer, you'll find that it's a powerfully transformative contemplative practice of simply becoming deeply present and attentive to all that comes to us in our lives, so that we may truly live in healing and freedom. So we'll begin this time of welcoming prayer by bringing our very non-judgmental attention to whatever is happening right now in our experience, both in our circumstances and in our mental, emotional, and physical responses to those circumstances. So again, this helps us to free ourselves of our attachments and our addictions and our reactivity. Um, and then having created a very welcome, open space for whatever we're experiencing in our bodies, we'll then surrender and release our resistances to whatever's happening so that we can become open to the renewing presence and work of God in our lives. This is how we become unstuck. So if you haven't already, let's go ahead and start by finding a sitting position that just allows you to be very comfortable, but still alert. If you haven't already, gently close your eyes or cast your gaze down softly in front of you. And again, take a few slow, deep breaths, breathing all the way into your body, just filling your lungs and expanding your stomach. And then slowly exhaling, relaxing, letting go, settling in more and more with each breath. Very good. Now let your breath become natural, just allowing your body to breathe all by itself, not trying to control or change your breath, just being aware of it. Taking a few moments now to simply relax in the presence of God. So as much as you're able, gently turn your attention toward God, who dwells deep within you. Seek to commune with God in your inner being and enjoy being with God for the next few moments as I pray this prayer for us. Loving God, quiet our minds that they may be still. Open our hearts to the holy presence of your Spirit. And lead us into that mysterious silence where your love is revealed to all. Amen. So seeking to open up to and surrender all that you are to God in this very moment. Let this surrender, let it be your act of worship. So take a moment now to focus, to feel, and to sink into any emotions, thoughts, commentaries, or sensations that are happening in your body. Whatever is most prominent for you right here, right now. There's no need to resist whatever is there, whatever is slightly out of focus, whatever it is. Try not to resist any of it. Simply experience whatever is there. Your thoughts, emotions, or sensations. And as you do this, envision the divine indwelling of the Holy Spirit moving into those feelings, into those thoughts, into those sensations. Simply welcoming the divine indwelling by simply saying the word welcome, welcome, welcome. I welcome everything that's coming to me in this present moment because I know that it's coming to me for my healing. I welcome all thoughts, feelings, emotions, persons, situations, and conditions. Continue embracing the Holy Spirit that infuses this content that's stored within your own body. And stay as long as you need to in opening to and welcoming the indwelling Spirit. We'll take a few moments in silence. And so now that you've welcomed God's Spirit into all those places in yourself that are in need right now, I invite you to let go of those things that God has already covered. Take some time to rest in your mind and in your body as you silently repeat the following after me. I let go of my desire for security. I let go of my desire for approval. I let go of my desire for control. I let go of my desire to change any situation, condition, person, or myself. I open to God's love. I open to the presence of God. I open to God's healing action and grace within me. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Amen. So gradually bring your attention back to your outer world. Very gradually and gently back to the room you're in. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. I hope you find this prayer to be a really helpful practice in welcoming God's Holy Spirit into your very being and into everything you experience in your life. And then letting go and letting God do transformational work within you and through you. So I've left some time here so we can just discuss very briefly what that was like for you to be able to open to whatever is going on and how you might be able to do this when you're met with disturbing or challenging situations in your everyday life, where you can feel that initial constriction of something that hits you wrong, something that rubs you the wrong way. You can feel that initial constriction and how you might use this welcoming prayer to take a deep breath and open back up to the situation so that you can bring God's love and grace into the situation, not an ego reaction, a reflex reaction. So I'd love to hear any of you that might share what that was like for you. I also want to encourage you to, if you're not already using the welcoming prayer, to go online and find a copy of it and print it out and keep it in the place where you practice centering prayer or your meditation. Make it a part of your life so that you, when you do get in distressing situations in your outer life, you can use it and you can do it very quickly. Mary Ellen, were you trying to say something?
Yes, Jana. I was not
Good.
particularly familiar. I had read the welcoming prayer, but until I read the chapter and then this wonderful presentation today. But what I realized, Jana, is that I have been using it. I have a lot of pain.
Yes, I know.
I give that pain over, and it really, sometimes it totally goes away.
Wow.
And
it dissolves.
Right. And I so appreciate that. I've also obviously used it in some of the other pronouncements from doctors and things like that.
I bet. Yes.
And, I find, I almost have to say that I find myself, I think I'm almost a totally different person when it comes to some of the things that would have blown me through the roof in the past.
Right. Yes.
So I'm extremely grateful for the chapter, for your and for the sharing of other people too.
Good.
Because I realize that I've been walking with something that I really didn't know a lot about. But
wonderful. It does work, doesn't it?
It really does. So thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful, Mary. You've been doing the welcoming prayer without calling it the welcoming prayer, but yes, absolutely.
But I've tried to welcome the pain, welcome the distressing news, and of course,
Exactly.
it's easy to welcome the good news.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good.
I'm surprised.
Oh, that's
Spirit.
spirit led you where you needed to be. That's wonderful.
That's
Now
right.
you have a name for it.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
That's great, Mary Ellen. Thank you. And I think, Carl, did you have a question or you had your hand up and then now I don't see you?
Again, a
Okay.
very, very quick comment.
Oh, good.
I love that the opening line of the welcoming prayer. I welcome everything that comes to me this day, for it comes for my healing.
Mhm.
And that's emotional, that's physical, that's
Yes.
in all manner of things.
Yes.
And for me, it's the open invitation to see that all things are sacred.
Yes,
That all
absolutely.
comes from God. And if I have that as my way of perceiving,
Yes.
it makes a
Yes.
world of difference
It really does, Carl.
in
Yes,
how
it
I
does.
will carry out my day.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you for all that you have
Thank,
given us.
and
And
thank you for
continue.
all that you've shared, Carl. Thank you. I hope to see you in the next class.
Yes.
And yes, we're bringing God into the world instead of our ego, aren't we, when we do this? Absolutely. Yes.
The
Right.
recognition is, in essence, that we are God's presence in the world.
That's right. That's very well put.
I'm
Beautiful.
not who I am. I am who I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's so much, but
There's
yes.
so much. Absolutely. Bringing
Thank you.
God into the world instead of our ego. That's right.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference. I see there's a couple of hands and there are a couple of questions in the chat that I hope y'all have seen that I'd love to address. So I will be happy to stay a few minutes after class to address those. If anybody needs to leave at the top of the hour, feel free to do so. But for now, let's go to Chris, and then I'm going to go to a question in chat, and then Adrian, okay?
I just wanted to comment that my whole life I've kind of been taught, give it to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this finally has kind of put a name to what you do,
Yes,
and
what that means. Yes.
right, and actually a pattern of what to follow to give it to God.
Yes.
I found
what that means and how to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I thought
Yes.
that was really good. I'm not a very stressed person, and so a little bit of stress that I have today, I gave to God, but it's
Good.
like, it's really, really a nice way to, go through it mentally with a
Right.
yeah.
Because, if we're not doing this kind of process, deep inner spiritual process work with it, when we say we're giving it to God, we can just be dismissing it. And that's
Yeah.
not what we're after.
No.
So this allows us to take that truth of giving our troubles to God. It gives us a way of doing that is very transformational, very healing. So thank
Right.
you for pointing that out, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Owen has a wonderful question. He said, I've noticed that in trying to lean into the feelings that come up, I find the sensations happen very fast and disappear straight away, almost like an electric shock. It can feel like that. It is energy. He goes on to ask if there are any tips for being able to hold on to it in order to feel it more. So this is where the ego wants to attach and say, I want more of this, I want more and more and more. And we've got to realize that we've got to let go of that too. We've got to let go in this moment, let go of our need to control, and open to the emotion, as you say, lean into the feeling. We do it in this moment. We do it in the next moment. We let go again in the next moment. It's just sort of an ongoing process of letting go, where we just keep opening up and opening again as we constrict around it, as the ego wants to get a hold of that and hold on to it. We open back up again, and then the ego tries to constrict, and then we open back up again. And it's that dance, it's that ebb and flow that I've mentioned before, where it's really a beautiful process of going into ego, going back to God, going into ego, going back to God, constriction, expansion, tightness, spaciousness. And it's just, a wonderful rhythm to get into, because that's the interplay of our human nature and our spiritual nature. So rather than going with the idea of how do I get more of this, or how do I hold on to it, the question might become, how do I simply open back up to this again and again and again, and now in this moment, and now in this moment? So play with that, Owen, and I do mean play with it rather than work on it. Play with just continuing to open over and over again, and see. I'd love to hear how that works for you. Good, thank you for that question. And then Adrian, I think you had something for us.
Jana,
Yeah,
I gotta go. I
Oh, okay, Sue.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. Thank
You
you.
have been
God bless
wonderful,
you.
and
Thank you.
everyone has.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
know. What a great group. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you, Sue. Adrian, please.
Jana, I just wanted to say that as someone who's very new to centering prayer,
Yes.
I, as you know from the email I sent you, I can
Yes.
find the experience itself somewhat frustrating, especially after about the first 10 minutes or so.
Yes.
I feel like I'm not doing it right. But
Yes.
here's the remarkable thing.
Good.
Even though I feel like I'm not very good at it yet, I noticed, and so have other people, amazing effects in the rest of my life.
Good.
From having these consistent times of centering prayer.
Yes.
What I find is that I am less reactive, more easily let things go in my regular life, and feel more compassion without really trying. So I just wanted to say, in case, as a word of encouragement, in case there's anyone who's very new to it, that even though I often feel frustrated in the experience itself, it is already reaping real benefits in my life.
Adrian, that's how it works too, is we see it in our life, and sometimes we see it in the rearview mirror as we look back and begin to notice, oh, that's what God's doing in my life. At the time, it doesn't really register, so we think nothing's happening, and we have this inner commentary that's saying, I'm no good at this, I can't do this, I must be doing something wrong. We put a stick in the spoke of that commentary, in the spokes of that commentary, and we move back down into the truth in our heart of hearts, where we know when we're sitting in centering prayer, whether we realize it or not consciously, God is working. We're giving God the opportunity to work directly in and through us. We're bringing ourselves to God and saying, heal me in the way I need to be healed and held. And I might not be conscious of that, of what's going on, but I know that you're doing that. And you're right, you do start seeing it in your daily life. It does show up in your daily experience. So stay with it. And thank you for offering that encouragement as peer to peer to all of the rest of us in this group, that we do need, this is not a solo journey and it's not a solo practice. We need each other, and we need to be here and support each other and hear each other and be able to express to each other and share, and encourage each other. So thank you so much for this and opportunity to be with you guys. Gives my life real meaning to be able to share and see the lights go off in not just your heads, but in your hearts. And if you have any questions or anything you want to talk further about, you can always email me. And I do hope for those of you that can attend and have the time to catch up with us you have the whole month of April to catch up with us for the start of the Practicing the Presence course on May 1st. So thank you and blessings to everyone. I'll read all your messages in chat. I wasn't able to see them all at once, but I will read them all, sit right here and read them. Thank you, everybody. Love to all.
Thank you, everyone.